All right, so I'm watching this. For some reason, it's YouTube, and they pop up. They give me a suggestion. I'm looking at Aron is interviewing Nathan Ormond, who I brought up now once or twice in my videos, and I sat down and had a chat with them. And so I start watching this, and there's a video from a couple of days ago that I haven't gotten to yet, where he's on with Stephanie talking about some of the same subjects. But I'm watching Aron interview Nathan. Okay, Nathan, if you don't know, he's kind of in between agnostic and Christian. I think he's leaning atheist, like I said in the other video, but we'll see. But I'm watching Aron interview him, and I'll go back to it and finish it and give you a full accounting and listen to the Stephanie thing and give you a better accounting. But I had to stop. I had to stop 5, 7, 10 minutes into it, or 15 minutes into it. I had to stop right away and just say, look, Aron, you got to take what Aron says with a ton of salt. A ton of salt. Because in the first 15 minutes, he's giving him a presentation kind of sort of about who he is and how he came to some of what he's about. And, here's the problem with professional atheists. I don't know that they mean to be dishonest and totally misrepresent religion through and through, but he did almost mind-bogglingly in the first 5 minutes. First of all, he tells him that he was a hippie in California in the 70s. That I buy. That's probably true, okay? I buy that. But then he tells him that he read the Bhagavad Gita, and he approached the Bhagavad Gita as if it was the inerrant word of God. I'm like, there's no way on earth that's true. Now, I don't know if he really meant to say that, so give him the benefit of the doubt. But if he did actually mean that, there's no way on earth that's true. That's why I had to stop the video. Because he said a couple more things like that. There's no way. I hung out with hippies, okay? I was more of a punk rocker, kind of a postmodern cool guy myself, postmodern, drank a lot, took drugs with the hippies. There were a lot of hippies in my school where I went to college up in upstate New York. And we had a house, and hippies were always at our house. I hung out with hippies all the time. And I kind of sort of was one, if you talk about just taking drugs and reading things like the Bhagavad Gita and read stuff like The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. That was the big one. I think I might have even been, shrooming the night I read it, like, oh my God, this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever read in my life. I had this experience with it. So I totally understand that mindset. There's no way on earth, there is no way on earth he approached the Bhagavad Gita if it was the inerrant word of God. That is not how hippies think. That is not how hippies read these texts. Period. No way. That's only from fundamentalists, and it's possible he did that with the Bible, but that's a Christian fundamentalist framing about how to read the Bible. No hippie on earth would ever tell you to read something like that, and there's no way a hippie would ever approach a text like that. So I don't buy it right there. Then another thing he does, which is a classic anti-theist, atheist move. He starts talking about Satan, and he starts saying that, Satan, and he starts saying things that are kind of true or rooted in truth, but he uses them illegitimately, the way most of these atheists, most YouTuber atheists, anti-theists do. They do what I'm starting to call the everything but the kitchen sink approach to theology, to counter-apologetics, whereas every little piece of information you learn somehow underscores the fact that God does not exist and these texts are all false. Because you've ginned it up to mean that, even though it doesn't, in a way that's totally and completely and utterly false. So he tells him something borderline true or potentially true. That Zoroastrianism and the concept of Satan in the Bible, those two are interrelated. And that's potentially really plausible. Zoroastrianism was in the body politic at the time, was in the social body, those ideas were floating around at the time. That they might have wound up in the Bible and they kind of match each other, those are potentially true. They don't negate the reality of the ideas. Therefore, and he's using it to say, therefore God does not exist, Satan does not exist. It doesn't follow from that. And apparently, this is the same person who probably with the clear conscience will turn around 5 minutes later in the same conversation and point to the atheists mean that they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. Do you see how astoundingly fallacious this is? And this is standard atheism operating procedure when dealing with ancient religions. First of all, it's not groundbreakingly important that some of the ideas of Zoroastrianism may actually mirror some of the ideas in the Old Testament about Satan or about hell, things like that. That's not groundbreakingly important. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. They were part of the same culture, same body politic. So those ideas might have found their ways into the Bible is totally, people draw inspiration from other sources. But then the same person will turn around and say they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. And all these religions logically contradict each other. Not see how astonishingly fallacious that is. They can't draw inspiration from the same source and logically contradict each other at the same time. You only point to certain things to gin up the argument in favor of the proposition God does not exist. And you do it falsely. Do you see what I'm saying? That's common, standard atheist operating procedure. Now, Nathan's a good guy and he's smart. And he's honestly struggling with these questions, it seems like, to a real degree. I would say to Nathan, be careful when you talk to some of these people. Because they have a real agenda, a real dog in the fight. And they've been working 20 years on it in the case of Aron Ra. And he only disseminates pieces of information, and he's learned to do it a lot over the years. So it's like the debate that he had where, he was in a debate seemingly with a clear conscience. He is in a debate and he will tell you in plain English that he has been studying religion for 20 years. And yet the same person never seems to have found any of the pro-social benefits of Christianity. He'll tell you in plain English both of those things as fact. He's never discovered any pro-social benefits of Christianity, and yet he's been studying religion for 20 years. If you do one Google search right now today, page 1, you will find pro-social benefits of Christianity right there in front of your face. Same idea as what he does with Zoroastrianism. And I'm not pointing at him specifically, because he's not the biggest culprit. A lot of atheists I talk to do this. There's a whole body of atheist counter-apologetics that are totally false. If if Horus has some similarities between Horus and Jesus, well, then Jesus is fake because it was based on Horus. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of different explanations for these complex phenomena, complex underlying things. And God does not exist is not the one catch-all that makes it all make sense. It doesn't work like that. And obviously they can't logically contradict each other and be all over the place in terms of what they believe and yet parallel and mirror each other at the same time. One of the things I pointed out in my videos time and time again, you'll learn this immediately if you study comparative religion, is that there are a lot of themes, a lot of parallel ideas, a lot of things that are similar from text to text, religion to religion. So, that right there, I had to address that before I go on. Now I'm going to watch, it's really interesting to me where Nathan is at. Not because I necessarily care one way or the other in particular with convincing him, that's not on the agenda. But it is interesting to see him struggle with these questions because he's struggling right in that sweet spot where a lot of atheists were, where they started out like him, a fundamentalist, and became an atheist, and he seems to be right in that place. Wouldn't surprise me if he started streaming as an atheist in the next year and a half. At all. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But part of the way this charade works is that atheists have catch-all answers for profound questions, and their catch-all answers all point to one thing. So they learn, and it's all falls under the banner of the everything but the kitchen sink approach to counter-apologetics. You learn one little new piece of information, and somehow that backs up that God does not exist. And I swear, atheists do this all the time. That's why I started disengaging from these debates with atheists. Why? Because it was totally counterproductive. They think falsely that everything they learn, every little piece of information they learn, backs up the proposition God does not exist. Why? Because they gin it up to mean that. They jujitsu it into that as its significance. That's its core significance. And Aron Ra, I'm not saying for a fact that Aron Ra is one of the people who's pointed to the meme that says they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. But it wouldn't surprise me, because most atheists do. And look at how that completely and utterly logically contradicts the idea that he just put forth to Nathan under a totally different context. That, Zoroastrianism heavily influenced the ideas of Satan in the Old Testament. So they logically contradict each other, and yet they liberally borrow one from the other. Those two things can't both be true. You see what I'm saying? Those two things can't both be true. They can't logically contradict each other and borrow liberally one from the other at the exact same time. They can't. Something's wrong. And furthermore, he was presenting how he read the Bhagavad Gita as totally fallacious. Somebody was saying that to me in a conversation, I would stop right in my tracks and go, I'm not sure if I can trust another word that comes out of his mouth, because there's no way on earth, I promise you, that a hippie picked up the Bhagavad Gita and said this is going to be the inerrant word of God. Now, I don't know if he meant it. Just pointing out to young little Nathan, young little Nathan, and anybody listening, to be careful with this stuff. Be careful with this stuff. Asking honest questions is good. Asking honest questions and looking for honest answers is good. Coming up with fake answers from professional atheists is not good. And they have a lot of fake answers. That's my point. That's my point. And in terms of evangelizing, they're just as much, constantly on the take looking for new converts as any Christian you will ever meet under any context. Particularly the two that he dealt with, Doug, Pine Creek Doug and Aron Ra. Pine Creek Doug, that's what he wants to do. He wants to convert you. He doesn't actually want to understand the actual phenomena of religion. And he certainly doesn't want to examine from a way that challenges him. He only wants to try to challenge you. And he only wants to challenge you in one direction. Gee, what a coincidence, so that you stop believing. So that you become like him. It's not honest engagement. It's not honest inquiry. It's not honestly engaging with complicated ideas at all. Nor was Aron Ra. Do you see what I'm saying? So, any of you could benefit from this. Not everyone who listens to my video is a committed atheist already putting out YouTube videos. Those people already have a dog in the fight. Some of you may be exactly where Nathan is at, asking honest questions and looking for real answers. Okay. Be skeptical of the professional atheists. Why? Because they're full of it. First 5 minutes, everything Aron Ra said to him was false. Every minute of it was false. I promise. Everything I just went over explained it. That's why I had to stop the video, because everything he said to him was false. He may have been a hippie in Southern California, I'll give him that. He was not a hippie who thought that the Bhagavad Gita was inerrant. Nobody thinks that in hippie circles at all, period. I know that for a fact. I used to interact with the hippie circles all the time. Yeah, I used to go to Dead shows and things like that. I don't even know if people listening know who the Grateful Dead are. Do you know who the Grateful Dead are? Is that still a thing that people, people even know what I'm talking about when I bring that up? It was a whole thing when I was in college. There was a whole subculture. It was all hippied out. The deal was you'd take something like mushrooms or acid and you'd go to the concert and you'd sleep in a tent and the music. I still like the music to this day. Underrated musically as far as I'm concerned. Really interesting influences. Borrow liberally from bluegrass, folk. There's songs like "Come Hear Uncle John's Band by the Riverside. Got some things to talk about." No, not feeling it. All right. What was some of the songs? If my words could glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear? Yeah, not feeling it. No, I wasn't really in it. All right, whatever. But, there was a whole subculture there, and there was a lot of New Age. So I believe him that he was a child of the 70s, and there was a lot of New Age woo stuff floating around, because I know those cultures. But not a single person in that culture, under any circumstances, ever picked up the Bhagavad Gita and said this is inerrant. That's not framing from hippies. That's only fundamentalists who think that way, and it's only about the Bible. So that wasn't true. And once I heard that, my skeptic radar went up. I could be skeptical too. I was like, well, that's false. Let's wait and hear what else he has to say. And every other thing he said to him was basically false. Basically false. Most of the atheist counter-apologetics are fake, through and through. Promise. I promise. I'll have a lot of videos up showing you that in plain English. And you can decide for yourself, but I'm telling you God's honest truth. The bread and butter of most of these channels of the counter-apologetics are fake. There's grains of truth in them, but for the most part, they're false. They take a little bit of truth and they go somewhere with it to find implications. Oh, look, how groundbreakingly important that this points to the fact that God does not exist. And they take implications that are not there, and they gin it up to present it as fact. So I don't know if that quite made sense. But anyways, I'm going to watch this video. I'll make another video on this particular thing after I've watched this and Stephanie's interview with Nathan, and we'll see where we're at with little Nathan. yeah, little Nathan is exploring. That is all for now, kids. Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.